Welcome back to the Tailoring Talk magazine. Roberto here. I'm kind of excited today because I haven't done one of these business inspiration, life story type conversations for quite some time. So it's great to be back in that saddle, especially with the person that I'm about to introduce you to. Today we're talking craft, creativity, and cocoa with someone who proves that you do not need to be a Bond villain in order to build an empire out of chocolate. At just 23 years old, my guest took over a beloved artisan chocolate shop in the Chilterns, transforming from Saturday girl to award-winning chocolatier and entrepreneur. She's already been crowned Artisan Chocolate Entrepreneur of the Year 2025 amongst a whole bunch of other awards, and is building TuTu Chocolates into a destination brand known for daring flavors, sustainability, and unforgettable customer experiences. Please welcome to the Tailoring Talk magazine, the brilliant Milissa Davis of TuTu Chocolates. Milissa, how are you?
Well, I'm really excited to be on your podcast. I think it's fantastic that we have the opportunity to talk about the connection between our two worlds, about how a bespoke suit and a hand-rolled chocolate both celebrate artistry and individuality, and how we both turn something that is traditional into something that is modern, that is desirable and approachable.
So we met at an event a couple months ago. I was in a bit of a weird place because I sort of walked into the room where you had all your wares out, and then I walked straight back out again because I have got a massive sweet tooth. And at that point, a few months ago, I was about 5 kilos heavier and determined not to be led into temptation. But then I was back a few hours later and basically scoffing my way through just about every flavor combination that you could put in front of me, and I had a great time. But also, obviously, we connected because what we do, there is synergy between what we do in terms of the customer experience and the fact that we're creating things from scratch and we're trying to do things differently to the rest of our industries. The big thing that sticks out in my mind, though, when someone else who was at that event, one of the kind of hosts or greeters or whatever, was talking about you, I heard an interesting fact that you hadn't even either liked or eaten chocolate up until about the age of 16. And so I'm
Yes.
kind of looking over at you thinking, she looks like some sort of chocolate goddess, but how the hell is that possible? Take me back to younger Milissa and tell me how you've managed to avoid chocolate like throughout your entire childhood.
So always had more of a savory palate. And so when I was 16, I was just looking for a Saturday job to do whilst I was doing my GCSEs. And so I went and I walked down my high street. I live in Watlington, Oxfordshire. And I've been blessed to have a chocolate shop, which is where my journey started at. And so I went and I started at TuTu Chocolates, which I went and I was doing a Saturday job and then quickly went into doing a apprenticeship where I started learning and making all the chocolates. But when I first got the job, they turned to me and they said, well, in order to be able to sell the chocolate, you need to taste it. And I was a bit apprehensive because up until that point, I didn't think I liked chocolate. And so when I tasted the chocolate, I was blown away because it's completely different from any sort of everyday chocolate that you may come across. And so from that one bite, I realized that chocolate's so well known but unknown, and there's so much to it from art, science, geography, even down to how it's processed. There's so much depth to it, and I fell in love. So yeah, I went into an apprenticeship and I learned how to make all the chocolates. So I was there for 5 years, and then I went and I worked across London doing courses across the UK. Did courses in Las Vegas as well with some world-renowned chocolatiers and patisserie chefs. And then it was January 23, when I was 23, that the previous owner announced that she wanted to retire. And I was really fortunate that I was able to get a business loan along with my savings to be able to purchase a business. So it's a wonderful full journey. Um, I had a lot of people actually who remembered me from when I was 16, and they were like knocking on my parents' door saying, we want Milissa, does Milissa know the chocolate shop is up for sale? And I was really blessed that I was, with that wonderful support that's continued with my customers, and that I was able to have the full circle with my career.
God, I had a moment there that took me back to as a child reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I absolutely loved Roald Dahl, and I'd just read all of his books like on repeat. But there's a moment in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory where Willy Wonka kind of says to Charlie, after he's kind of got through all of the trials and things that all those kids are put through. And I think Willy Wonka says something, I haven't read it for a long time, but something like it was always going to be you, or something like that. He was out of all those kids, it was Charlie who was the heir apparent, the one who was born to do this. And I just got a little bit of that magic from that little story there. I mean, do you kind of feel kind of that way that for them? I mean, have you ever spoken to Zoe since and sort of really asked her, was there a point where you knew that I was the one that was, going to have this all sort of handed over to?
I think that's really
Well, not
magical
handed
how
over
you've
to you. You had to
drawn.
get a loan and actually buy
Yeah.
the thing, but
Well, yeah, I did, yeah. But I think that's magical how you sort of draw those two conclusions. I did have to buy the business, yes. Because my heart was there. I left my heart there, you know? Um, but yeah, Zoe, an amazing woman. I had a real legacy to try and step up and, take over the business. And she's been really lovely and supportive. She comes in all the time and is really excited to taste all my new flavors. And she loves what I've done with the business because since taking over, I rebranded, I created new flavors and really sort of adapted upon the sort of existing brand, keeping it core to what the customers knew it as, just with a little modern little twist to it. But yeah, we never really had that sort of, I guess, heart to heart like Charlie and Willy Wonka. But yeah, I have got the nickname Millie Wonka, so I'm halfway there.
brilliant.
But yeah.
Did you think as soon as the opportunity came up, right, that's it, no doubts, I've got to do this, and by hook or by crook, I'm going to make this happen? Or did you have some doubts along the way as to what you were doing? Did you think, oh my God, hang on a minute, am I being completely insane here?
So two things come to mind when you ask me that question. Um, so firstly, I started crying as soon as I got off that phone call with Zoe because I just, I knew in my heart that I wanted to have the business, but I knew that there was a possibility with my age, everything that, I might not be able to get approved for, with the loan. There were so many different hurdles. It just been locked down. So, with the banks, they're a lot more tighter. So I had to really prove myself to be able to, to get there. But one of the things was through my training. So I did this course with Milissa Cooper, amazing woman. And firstly, you go there and she turns to everyone and she says, I don't care what experience you have. It does not matter. In here, we're all equal and we're all going to learn together and have fun. And throughout the class, you're going to be teaching it. And we were like, what? How? She said, I'm going to narrate it and you're going to be doing all the cooking. So you're going to put your hand up and throughout the class, you're going to pick whichever recipe that you want to create for the first time and make it in front of everyone else. And I'm gonna narrate it. And, at that time, I was 21 and, I was one of the youngest ones there. And I, was a little bit apprehensive. And I thought to myself, look, I've noticed that other people, no matter what age they are, they're also apprehensive. And so I spoke with them and I said, look, let's all do it together. Like, we're not going to, we're not going to be perfect because it's the first time it's creating this recipe, but let's just do it. And, I decided in that moment that we were going to go and focus on the two moments that we're feeling in our stomach, the moment of fear and the moment of excitement. We both were there for a reason. And to let fear kind of swallow you up or self-doubt, I think in the past I've struggled a lot with self-confidence and sort of growing, in to like the person that I am. And I thought to myself, yeah, I'm going to focus on the excitement. And so that sort of led me through with my career is, yeah, there's fear. Yeah, there's excitement. Just focus on the excitement and, keep powering on just one step in front of the other one. And when this opportunity arose, I just had to jump at it. And yeah, it's been a wonderful experience and I'm absolutely loving it. And I've got so many exciting things that I'm going forward with it. I think sometimes the excitement can be a bit too much. And so you have to kind of steady yourself down and think, right, what can I do at what stage? Because you can just get so carried away with it because it's so much fun working with chocolate. And what was quite heartwarming about that was one of the ladies, after I volunteered and I put my hand up, she went and got the courage and put her hand up too. And after she did it, and she
Hmm.
did a brilliant job, she actually like broke down and cried. And she was like, I've never believed in myself. I've never done anything where I've been like standing out from the crowd and sort of leading. And it was such an emotional release for her. It was actually like incredible that, you know, it makes you think that there's a lot of people in the world and we all have completely different experiences, but at the end of the day we all sort of are connected. And in that class we connected so much. It was amazing because we all overcame that fear of, you know, doing something completely brand new and putting ourselves there where we could fail in front of the class, but instead we all rose up and we had an amazing time. And we just, yeah, were really close on, and we still keep in contact now to this day, which is amazing. So yeah, that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned.
I think it's so cool that you also had that kind of experience when you're in the early stages of taking the business over. Because most entrepreneurs, they start a business for whatever reason, right? A lot of the time it's because they're in a job and they sort of think to themselves, you know what, I could just go and do this for myself and make more money and have a bit more freedom. um, or
Yeah, that trick.
there's something that they're passionate about that, yeah, exactly. Or there's something that they're really passionate about, or a problem that they've seen that no one else is solving. And so they take it upon themselves to solve that problem or do things differently to everybody else. But then fear kind of is like a through line with them every single working day. And they unfortunately don't have the opportunity either to have an experience like you did with other people as well, or to read or, you know, do self development or whatever it is. And it's one of the things that I tried to do in the early days of this podcast because it was born in the pandemic when there was a lot of fear and uncertainty.
Wow.
And it was trying to get people to share their stories so that people who hadn't been able to either self educate themselves or have that type of education to deal with those kind of emotions and feelings, we're able to learn from other people. I have no idea if I'm making any sense or not,
No,
but you're
it's
nodding your head,
brilliant.
so that's a good
Yeah.
sign. So yeah, so no, I think that, so I think it's great that you had that experience so early on, where so many other people will kind of almost let fear rule them, and then they'll get to a stage in future where it either consumes them completely and everything falls apart, or they have to take a time out, learn how to deal with it before they can actually move on and progress and grow.
Yeah, well, I think one of the beautiful things about Watlington is the sense of community, but also with business, you have that sense of community where, you know, like what you said, you created this for a purpose to be able to sort of um, allow people to share in a moment of closeness, of vulnerability, perhaps, where they can connect with people when it just felt so distant because of, you know, the fact that we were in lockdown. So I think that's brilliant. But yeah, you know, I think with with everything that I do with my business, my customers have been there as long as I have, you know, or maybe just even longer. And so it's always about reverting back into thinking about them. You know, it's I'm proud to say that my business has a lot of word of mouth, and that's what grows my business. It's the customers and it's the customer focus. So I think it's brilliant, and that, you know, you've got this podcast and that, you know, we're able to share the connection with our two businesses. Sorry, I stumbled a bit then. I think it's fantastic how you created this platform that we can share our differences and compare the similarities between our businesses and reach a sort of a wider audience, to maybe put a smile on someone's face where they might discover our two brands for the first time.
The thing that really stood out to me when I first sampled one of your amazing, many amazing flavor combinations was the journey that you go on in that 30 to 60-second period between sticking it in your mouth to kind of trying to work out what's going on in there. And then you have that initial, you know, if you bite through and then you get the initial obvious thing, which is this is chocolate in my mouth, but there's something else in it, to the kind of flavors starting to creep up on you. And then, so I think the first thing of yours that I tried, you'll remind me because you probably remember, but there was chili going on in there. There was a bit of heat, which kind of kicked in the latter stages of this little micro journey. And I just found that quite incredible. And where I'm really, really interested is in how you kind of work that sort of stuff out are you constantly sort of thinking about things that aren't obviously obvious bedmates for each other, for want of a better expression, and then kind of sort of putting them together in your, I imagine that you have this mad laboratory with Bunsen burners and stuff. That's probably not what it is. And you kind of walking around in a white coat. And now I'm starting to go towards Oompa Loompas and stuff. No, hang on. Right. Let's roll back. How do you kind of get there? How do you sort of experiment and so on? Take me through Melissa's process, if there is one.
So when I taste flavor, I see colors. And so that's one of the first things that I start with is I let the color sort of lead the journey. At that particular event that we met, the sort of the concept of it was to display the chocolates in a way that was quite unusual. So you played with the mind because the colors didn't resonate with what you thought it would be. You didn't know from looking at it what flavors you would be tasting. And then I love to bring out the best of the flavors. And so, like with the chili, I use the cayenne pepper because you get the warmth on your throat rather on the tip of your tongue. So it takes a little bit where the chocolate melts on your tongue. So then suddenly get the hit of, hang on, there's something else in there. And so the flavors can sort of come out at certain times. So I like to play around with how, the chocolate is in your mouth because I think good quality chocolate, is to be savored. And, when I was with you, I told you just let the chocolate melt slightly on your tongue, put your tongue to the roof of your mouth and breathe in, and it brings through more of the flavor. And so then it's a little journey that I try and think about with each time someone tastes the chocolate. And so I sometimes I will go and I'll put flavors that are sort of, I guess, in my mind, the same color category. And sometimes I will go and I will play around with sort of trying to do something that's maybe contrasting. Believe it or not, one of the perks and one of the bits that I do a lot with my chocolate is actually tasting it. And so I work a lot by just tasting the flavors and just adding, I work at like a 10% of the ratio and then just add the flavors. And I just work organically, to be honest with you. I just let my senses tell me what to add. I don't necessarily overthink it. I just do it.
Yeah. And when you're doing all this tasting, how the hell do you maintain your shape? Or do you taste stuff and then spit it out like wine people do?
Gosh, no, no. Even when I do wine tastings, I do not spit it
Because
out.
I imagine like if I decided to if I decided to take a sabbatical and like say, Melissa, hey, I'll work for you for a year as your assistant for free, I'd be 3 times the size because I have no self-control whatsoever. So you have to
It's
forgive me. My mind goes to all sorts of places because of my imagination.
Well, the thing with the chocolate is it's good quality chocolate. It doesn't have the artificial additives, the unnecessary flavors into it. It's down to the quality of the chocolate. So with how the chocolate is processed from the trees, you have different grades of beans. So the beans that have the smallest yield have more flavor notes than wine. Then how you process it, what you add into it, um, it really defines the chocolate. So like with like everyday chocolate, for example, it may say it's like a 70%, but if you look on the ingredients, the minimum cacao is usually lower. And that 70% is made up with like the cocoa butter and fats. And then the rest of it is just sugar. And so you don't actually get all the health benefits of the actual chocolate. Whereas with the chocolate that I use with cocoa high in chocolate,
Yeah.
you have a 70% that means 70% of the cocoa solids. And then the rest of 30% is the cocoa butter, which is the natural fat. And it's a little bit of sugar. There's no artificial additives or unnecessary flavors added into it because the chocolate has so much depth to it. And then one of the things that I love about chocolate is it's a culinary passport. So each area around the world has different flavor notes that are just natural to the area. And so I like to play with the natural flavors of the chocolate and then just gently spice it, add an ingredient that just enhances or contrasts it. So it's the quality of the chocolate. That's what I say. I've been working in chocolates for 10 years. And, one of the other things with chocolate is it gives you lots of serotonin. So it's a real labor of love. And if you wanted to spend some time with me in my chocolate shop, you are most welcome to. And we can discover as much chocolate and do a tasting.
A lot of what you said there obviously is really important because when you think about cheap chocolate, which is what most people can get their hands on, and I know there's an affordability issue as well. Not everybody can afford to, spend whatever it is, 5, 7, 10 pounds on a slab of chocolate or whatever. But then the sugar content, I mean, there's a reason why that stuff is cheap, right? It's the
Yeah,
same in our industry as well. Like you could buy a suit for a couple £100 or a shirt for 30 quid, but it's going to be full of glue, nylon, man-made fibers, all of this sort of stuff made in a factory en masse. And is it good for you? No, because because of the lack of natural fiber, it's going to make you hot and sweaty. Some people come out in rashes and don't even understand why. It's not going to fit quite right, etc. We try as much as we can when we're picking collections every year to go for the most natural fibers that we can, not just because it's better for the person wearing it and these things will last longer, but also from a sustainability point of view, the more materials that we can use that can actually be recycled into something else after, the better.
amazing.
It sounds like I'm going off track a little bit, but where I wanted to come back to when it came to chocolate and diet is that, with your product, there's very little, if anything, that's gone in that you wouldn't be able to go out into nature and get your hands on. There's far less, if no processed ingredients, if I'm correct in saying, in any product that I would go and grab from your store and walk out with.
I think one of the things is when you look at the label, if you don't recognize what the ingredients are, if they haven't intentionally been put in, like for example, like if it's a milk chocolate, it has a different level of cocoa solids. So if it hasn't, if you don't recognize what's in the ingredients, then should you really be putting that into your body? Really, I think with chocolate, it started as a drink for the gods. It started up there, and it's had a wonderful journey where at one stage, chocolate was sold for currency. Like it just was, with the beans and the knowledge that we now have with chocolate, we can really bring out so much depth in the flavor. It doesn't have to be something that is sweet. It can be something that everyone can enjoy. I mean, one of the most interesting things with chocolate, it has a strange kind of history with it. I'm sure there probably is like a lot of history with your business as well. But one of the reasons why white chocolate was created is because it's to remind people of breast milk. That's why it's designed for children. And one of the reasons why, in like truffles, we make things that are called like ganaches, which is a cream butter emulsion. That was made way back in a French kitchen. And one chef was carrying some chocolate, another chef was boiling hot cream. And the chef of the chocolate bumped into him and went and accidentally mixed the two together. The chef called the other one a ganache, which apparently means idiot. And then the chef went and tasted it and then thought, wow, this actually tastes amazing. And so, I think there's a lovely element of the going back to the tradition with chocolate, but also a lot of how chocolate has been created is simply down to experiment. So I think you can have fun with it. It doesn't have to be, stuck into a small category of something that is typically made for children, whether it's a white chocolate or, with the milk powder and everything that was that was created, in mind for a younger demographic. We can all have chocolate from all ages and have a lovely nostalgic memory and create new ones. And I think that's the beauty with going with good quality chocolate is that none of that comes with a price. There's no compromise, from how he's looked after, from, the farmers being looked after, the quality of the chocolate, your body. Like there isn't a compromise with that. You can just simply just enjoy it and create new memories with it.
Just looking at the ingredients for a very famous, very popular make of chocolate, model of chocolate, whatever. I'm not going to name them because that's not fair, but here's the ingredients list, right? Milk chocolate with nugget or nougat, or however you pronounce it, right? So it's like sugar, glucose syrup, glucose fructose syrup. I have no idea what any of that is. Vegetable fats, palm, shea, sunflower, and rapeseed, wheat flour with added calcium, iron, niacin, thiamine, skimmed milk powder, cocoa butter, cocoa mass, whey permeate powder, which apparently comes from milk, fat reduced cocoa powder, milk fat, whey powder from milk. How is that different to the permeate powder? I have no idea. But again, I have no idea what these things are. Emulsifiers, all these, another two E numbers after that, soya lecithins, dried egg white, flavorings from milk. There's a lot that they seem to be taking from milk. I'm kind of thinking to myself, why don't you just put milk in it? Anti-caking, calcium carbonate, salt, barley malt extract, some raising agent, E503, nuts. Oh, there's not literally nuts in there. I'm just saying it's crazy. Why would you put anything in your body when you don't know what it is? And I bet if we contrast that to the ingredients label on any of your products, it's like with bread recently, right? So I was having this conversation with my wife about bread. Sourdough, I don't get on with. Every time I have sourdough, I just bloat like crazy. So now it's like completely banned from the house. But in any case, when you pick up like kind of shop bought bread, and you look at the ingredients list, it's like, okay, wheat, flour, fair enough, water, okay, whatever, yeast, fine. But then there's a whole load of other ingredients after that, preservatives and flavorings and added calcium and this and that and so on. There's the brand of Italian bread that we buy that has literally got, I think it's four or three ingredients on it. It's wheat, olive oil, and something else. I can't remember. But I recognize all three ingredients, and those are three ingredients I know that I can physically go out probably into nature and actually get my hands on them. And I can eat that stuff every single day, and it doesn't have any effect on me whatsoever.
Think it is mind blowing, as you're saying, like the amount of ingredients that are in a product. I think, yeah, you should definitely look at the label. Yeah, that's one of the differences is one, if you're trying to assess whether something is, good quality, and if it's, artisan, a lot of the times, if you look at the ingredients, you can tell the difference. But a lot of it is also in the taste and how it makes you feel, If you're feeling bloated or, feeling a bit sickly sweet, if that's the case from whatever you've eaten, it's your body is telling you really. So it's again reverting back into just listening to the core. What is it that you're putting in your body?
Yeah. Because if
Yeah.
if I roll it back to when we first met at this event, and you took me on a journey. The other interesting thing, I want to go back to earlier when you were talking about how, about color. And did you notice that people, when they went over to your table, whichever end they started, probably seemed to start at whatever colors, like their favorite colors or whatever they're attracted. Because I remember I love orange, and I ended up at that's the ends that I was kind of coalescing around to kind of start. Probably thinking somewhere in my mind, not just visually that it was attractive to me, but also um, that there might be some kind of orangey kind of flavors combined with the chocolate there.
hmm yeah, color plays a massive part in how you eat, how it is packaged, how you perceive it. It's incredible the amount your brain communicates with you before you even put something in your mouth. Yeah, at that event, I kind of tested it out a little bit. I had different colors that were sort of plexiglass that were like food grade that then had the chocolate on. And yeah, orange has always been a fantastic color with chocolate, which is why my brand is orange because people were drawn to it. That's the color that most people were drawn to. But my moving around the location across the table, it didn't make a difference about where people sort of started. It wasn't the positioning of the table where they walked in. It was simply, well, the colors that attracted. So yeah, I kind of
Yeah.
played around with moving things about. But yeah, it was amazing. The one that you tasted actually had activated charcoal inside, so it made it black in color. And some of the other ones, also had that. And some of them were like a caramelized white chocolate, and some of them are a dark chocolate. You just couldn't tell. But it is a lot of fun creating a journey with chocolate. But I think a lot of what I do with my journey is actually start by taking the clients to somewhere they're kind of familiar with, take them to that childhood nostalgia where there's their comfort level. So I kind of start by sort of asking what flavors are you kind of naturally drawn to, and then starting them there. And then I let their adult curiosity just guide them through to then tasting something that they might not have tasted before. So that's one of the things with my chocolate is I love to take people through that journey. It seems to be like an emotional response. And it's fantastic sort of seeing where people are gravitated towards. And so whenever I make anything, whether it's for my corporate, with my events where we met, or even for my shop, I always create a wide range of different types of chocolates so that
Mm.
as you have your journey with me, there's always something slightly different. And there's something within your comfort zone and something a little bit wild and a little bit curious about it so that, I can help support you as you guide through the different journey of flavors with chocolate. But I
Yeah.
imagine that, it's not just an emotional response that is what, helps sales with my chocolates. I imagine it's quite an emotional journey with with you. I mean, I had a look on your website, and I loved how you went and you said that before you go and create a piece of work for someone, you've got to get to know them. And I would love to sort of, figure out whether you go and create these, pieces of like tailored, beautiful clothing based on like a story. Is it like a story with each sort of piece that you do for each person? Like I can see that you have like an emotional sort of approach with how you create your pieces too.
So it's mainly, I'll answer that question. I'm just going to loop back around to the previous point I was making before I started talking about color, which is that I probably ended up trying about with you, I think about four or five different things. I also sneakily broke off a few pieces of other things and stuck them in my mouth as well while I was there. And then you very kindly gave me a little kind of sample box to take home, and those didn't last past midnight that day. So that's
Brilliant.
a lot of different types of chocolate. But I didn't feel sick. I didn't feel heavy, bloated. I didn't get that chalky taste in my mouth. And this is testament again to the quality and also the ingredients, what you're actually putting in there. Whereas anyone who's listening to this, if you imagine, what's the easiest example? Christmas time, your uncle or aunt or nan brings round a box of, like the Mars assortment where you've got like Milky Ways in there and Snickers and Mars and Maltesers and Galaxies. And I'm sure most of us has done this at one time or another. Before you know it, you're sitting there with an empty tin and a whole mass of wrappers and a whole heap of regret, remorse, self-loathing, disgust, knowing that you're going to be dealing with rolls of fat that are going to develop over the next couple of weeks and you're not going to be able to shift them for months and months, sometimes even years. People will look in the year 2025 at decisions that they made 10 years before when they dove into that box of assorted chocolates and felt sick. And that's the difference between, here's my point, the processed cheap stuff and artisan, handmade, crafted, quality ingredients, etc. That you can literally go around and sample about 7 to 12 different types of chocolate. And I'm not talking like tiny little dots of chocolate. I'm talking about something substantial that you can stick in your mouth and actually enjoy and crunch and chew and all the rest of it. Um, so yeah, it does make a big difference. That's the point. Anyway,
Yeah.
back to your question.
Oh, I got a point on that.
So go on then.
So I do lots of chocolate experiences where I do guided tastings with the chocolate. And so some of the types of people that I do these tastings with, they are part of the SOE where they go and they have their blood sugar sort of measured. And after they have tasted all the chocolate, I've had multiple people who have measured their sort of blood sugar spikes to see that there wasn't any. And so then they're like, wow, that's a testament
Well,
to your chocolate because we've just tasted a load of chocolate. And then they've got the direct readings from the arm to see how their body's been affected. And it hasn't been. And I mean, obviously, they did a tasting, so they didn't eat lots and lots of chocolate. But the chocolate that they did eat, it doesn't matter how much chocolate you do eat, you shouldn't have a massive spike in the amount of blood sugar that you have within your body. The big things that you should be doing with your body is actually improving your memory, your cardiovascular system, your heart, and giving you a great big boost of serotonin. That's what good quality chocolate should be doing. And so, yeah, I
yeah.
find that it is amazing. There is such a big difference. And as I said at the beginning, it's so well known chocolate, but unknown.
Yeah, because good quality chocolate should let the natural benefits of the key ingredient shine and do what they're meant to do, rather than mask and hide all of those benefits or even destroy those benefits, which is what cheap
Exactly.
chocolate does. So to go to your question, so when I have my regular clients, and so for them it's clothing is functional, right? But I still need to get to know who they see, the environment that they're in, the places that they're traveling to, so that I get some context because they'll come in saying, oh, I just need a grey suit or a navy suit, but we still want to inject some personality and make sure that when they're wearing that outfit, that they're being seen the way that they want to be seen. Where I go even deeper than that is probably with my wedding customers because they'll come in and they might have already been to 3 or 4 other tailors who've, it's like I'm getting married. Okay, well, you can have this suit or this suit, but the conversation never ever seems to be about them. So, I had a recent client whose wedding I did, Kevin Wong, and when he first came into me, he was comparing me to other tailors and I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, we sat down and I said to him, okay, so, when's the wedding? Tell me about your fiance. How did you meet? Um, are there any things that really stand out from the time that you were originally dating and, that sort of whole period when you kind of fell in love and knew that you wanted to be together? Colors that are really, really important to the two of you that really mean something. So for me, every time I see red, I think of the first time that I saw my wife. She was wearing this
Oh,
red coat, and that's when I realized I had a thing for her. The wedding venue, where's it taking place? What time of year is it? And then I'll always then sort of check the weather afterwards around, typical kind of weather patterns around that time of year. What's happening with the flowers, the bouquet. I always ask to speak separately to their fiance to find out what she's going to be wearing, because obviously there's stuff she can tell me that she doesn't want to tell him. So I've got the information from both sides, find out if there's anything important to her that she feels that she won't be able to tell him. But if I know, I can guide him in a certain direction. And once I've got this massive information, then I can kind of work out what the right path is for that person so that when they get to the wedding day and beyond and they look back at their pictures and so on, everything looks like it was meant to be. And also, most importantly, whatever they wear feels like them. So they can then forget about it and, get on with all the other stresses and pressures and emotions that go when you're going through the biggest day of your life. So that's kind of sort of very badly explained my process because it all happens really, really fast. So when I have to slow it down to explain it to someone, it's really, really hard for me to articulate and to do that because I'll get all this information in a 15 to 20-minute chat, but then I'll process it really quickly and then I'll know exactly what to do. And with him, when he halfway through, he stopped me and he said, "Oh, by the way, I'm comparing you with other people, and there are a couple of other tailors I need to go and see." And I was like, "Okay, fine. I'm not used to that, but that's okay." But I then just carried on the way that I normally would. And when he came back to me while I was measuring him, I didn't bring it up, but Kevin said to me, "So the reason I came back to you is because everybody else was leading with." You can have this suit, or you can have this suit, or you can, a lot of people are getting married in this season and you're the only one that didn't do that. You sat me down, gave me a cup of coffee, and then you just kept asking questions about me and Shem, his fiance, now wife. They got married a couple of weeks ago. He said, yeah, it was just a completely different experience. I felt like you really, really cared about us, and you didn't make any suggestions until you had all the information that you said you needed. And I was like, yeah, it's just the way I work. It's just, I mean, why would you dress someone and not know them? Why would you dress someone for the biggest day of their life and not want to know any details about, the setting and things that are important to them? I don't understand why, right? Why would you? It just doesn't
no.
make sense. And so for me, when I'm creating clothing for anyone, that's why I now say it on the website because I never used to say it before. But it's like, I can't dress you until I get to know you. So when people book appointments, if they're new, that appointment is not guaranteed. Just because you booked and you managed to get into the diary to see me on 24th of September at 12 o'clock, that appointment's not confirmed yet. I have to have a conversation with you on the phone before we meet. I
Mm.
call it an icebreaker call, but that's my opportunity to get to know them and ask them a few more questions and get some context, find out what's important to them. And then they also get the opportunity to ask me some questions and tell me anything that's on their mind ahead of when we actually meet in person. So that when we actually do meet in person, it kind of feels like you're seeing someone that you already know. It's
Yeah.
not intimidating. It's not, oh my God, what's going to happen? They've already got a really good idea of what's going to happen and they feel really comfortable at the same time. Because that's the other thing as well, is like you can go to a tailor and it's a very transactional relationship, or you can go to see someone who, I would like to think that most of my clients feel like I'm this friend that they happen to know and they're going through this journey and they would call me up and say, hey, you know about clothing, can you come with me? And that's kind of how I work with them. I try and work with them side by side and get to know them as a person. Getting to know them as a person really helps me to do that. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's amazing. That personalized approach. But I think the main thing is there is you put in the customer first. Because as I said, we have to try and balance tradition and innovation and, creating something that's a little bit modern. But it's about that customer. It doesn't always have to be about what's the latest next thing. It's about listening to them and making them feel supported along the whole way. And yeah, I mean, especially like for wedding and things like that, that's one of the, biggest moments of your life. And I think sometimes I think we can easily underestimate the power of sort of slowing down and actually taking the time to sort of really listen to what it is that we need, and what someone can actually do, and allowing someone to actually help us, making something even more special. I mean, I think that's real quality in how you do that, as well as with the materials.
And I think, we can still do all of the research, experimenting, innovating, etc. That goes without saying, because it's what keeps us going and keeps us motivated and energized, and kind of feeds that natural curiosity and need to experiment and all of that sort of stuff. You can do that in the background, but then it becomes a kind of almost resource, an armory of stuff that you can pull on when you're in that moment with the client, dealing with them and putting them first. Some of what you've been up to over the last 6 months might come into play, some of it might not, but at least you're kind of armed. I think the problem with a lot of people is when they go into places, they might go into a chocolatier and say, look, I need to get a gift for someone, or I'm hosting an event and I want to create something. And the difference is you either get the assistant or the owner that sort of walks around and says, well, these kind of chocolate truffles, a lot of people are buying those at the moment. We just did a load for so-and-so company, and, this guy bought them for a bunch of his employees. And then these are really popular at the moment. And people are kind of like, okay, yeah, well, they might be popular with other people, but that's kind of not what I'm really into. Or you get the owner that says, come and have a seat. Let me get you a drink. Tell me about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think taking that step back and actually talking with the customer, because at the end of the day, it's them. You are serving them, and giving them something that's a little bit special. And I think that's what makes it sort of, you stand apart. But yeah, completely. I think that's amazing how we both sort of do it in our own sort of way. But yeah, I mean, with regards to with you, I mean, you really like empower your customers and make them feel like a lot more confident in how they look. And I think that sort of confidence that kind of stays with them, because they then start thinking about, oh, hang on, I've got a friend here that I can actually go and say, look, I'm looking to go to this event, or like from speaking with yourself, I know that these sort of colors work with me, or I would like this material. And it brings them outside of their minds about what they think that they could have, and actually creates it into they could have so much more, and you just sort of show them the way with chocolate. It's about creating a little sort of hidden like little moments, and the memories that are attached to chocolate is so strong. And I think the memories attached to the pieces of clothing that you create for them are just so strong that it's something really sort of unique and ornate that sort of sticks with them and gets them to sort of tell other people. And you know I think it's not just about going and having a sale. It's about having someone who comes back because they know that you can give them exactly what they're after, or even more than they anticipated.
Yeah. Or even exactly what they didn't know they actually wanted, which is,
Yeah.
the most case. I have a lot of people that, at the end of the process, they say, do you know what I actually ended up with and what I thought I should be doing were just two completely different things. And, what we ended up with was just absolutely perfect. And it's really nice when you get Google reviews, because then that's where a lot of that sort of feedback comes through. But talking about creating for individuals, so I've got three famous people here who you'll know a bit about, and I'm going to tell you who they are. And then I want you to tell me kind of just your gut kind of reaction. And you can do it either in specific flavor, or you can do it in colors first and then lead into flavors, because that's how you generally think. So the first one I've got to do, because the podcast is synonymous with this person. It's a fictional, literary and cinematic character, James Bond.
Right. So I think you can sort of think of the classic of, he's well known for liking quality, but also his cocktail. So if you think about the what he naturally gravitates towards in the film, you're going to be thinking of something maybe more of like I would probably say like a dark chocolate, something with like more of the bitter tone. And then I'd say there's like an unexpected sort of sweetness that will suddenly come through, some sort of sharpness from whether that's a citrus note or whether that is something that is sort of a textural. I feel like yeah, you can have a lot of fun with having a real like slick back chocolate, but of course it has to be ready to eat on the go and something that can fit into a soup pocket.
And I was trying to do the same, and I came up with a truffle using a dark chocolate, um, quite smooth, with a hint of espresso martini in there.
Yeah,
So
I
yes,
think
I'm
that
quite
would be good.
quite proud of myself that you went the dark chocolate as well.
Yeah.
So next up could be that you get to do her engagement party since she just got proposed to Taylor Swift.
Yeah. I mean, who isn't a Swiftie these days? My best friend in particular is a massive Swiftie. So it's got to be fun. It's got to be bright. It's got to be playful. You know, I'm thinking like a chocolate that looks like a bubble or something, you know, something like a cloud, something really like sort of kind of like out there. Thinking fun flavors. You could even play with the element of nostalgia. So maybe a little bit of like popping candy or something, just like something that's suddenly extra surprise. I'm thinking, you know, like raspberry, something nice, like sort of fresh fruity one for her.
You're going to have to go back and make notes of these because I want to see them at some point and taste them. Okay, so David, this is the last one. So David Attenborough.
Uh, well, I mean, legendary. Well, I've got to make a chocolate that's dusty because he likes getting his hands dirty. He gets straight in there. So it's got to be natural, earthy. I would probably say that he's just so lovely that you kind of just want, he's like, I don't know, he's like a cuddle. It's like a warm hug whenever you hear his voice.
Yeah.
So I'd say something a little bit warming, maybe like a milk chocolate, something that maybe a little bit with a hint of like fennel. So you've got the traditional as well as something like nutmeg or, you know, something slightly unusual because he's such a character, he's a unique person. But something, you know, like the nutmeg and the milk chocolate, it's like it wraps around you. It's nice and cozy and warming, just like his voice, nice and silky.
Yeah, I was thinking honey with him for some reason. That was the first thing that popped into my head, and I'd written down earthy as well. So yeah, I really do. I might actually, when I get the transcript of this, is send it over to you so that you've actually got the what you said there, and then you can start kind of playing in your. I still think it's a lab, Melissa. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I can recreate these. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And yeah, it's a fun game
Okay, and
actually.
then
I actually quite
yeah, I
enjoyed
got
that.
another
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
I've got four things that repel a lot of people, but that are
Mhm.
quite divisive. Like people either love them or hate them. And I just want you to tell me either yes, it's possible, or absolutely no way, that is too weird. It just wouldn't work in any combination of any chocolate ever. Okay, ready?
Okay.
Blue cheese.
No. I know people who have done things with cheese, but I think it has to be with the chocolate and with something else. The chocolate has to be a really thin layer. I know people who love doing things with cheese, but blue cheese in particular is far too strong to go with
Okay,
a complementing with chocolate. So in my opinion, no.
good. I hate blue cheese. I don't understand the point of it. Next one, wasabi.
So yes, I think wasabi does go with chocolate. And I think there's so many so many complex flavors that can go really lovely with it, and to even enhance or to maybe sort of balance the palate after having something so hot. When you put wasabi into chocolate itself, you get the flavor, but the heat goes. It's really strange. So actually, you can put wasabi in chocolate, but it's better to pair it with chocolate because then you get the initial hit of heat like you used to with the wasabi.
Awesome. And then last one, Marmite.
So one of my previous ex-employers, he created a chocolate that had Marmite. And you know what? It was brilliant. It was fantastic. He absolutely nailed it. So yeah, I think you can do it with Marmite. Yes.
I'm really glad because I love Marmite. My wife can't stand it. She doesn't understand how it's even a thing that you would eat. And I've tried to explain it to her, but you know, she can't even stand me opening the jar, like just literally cracking it open. It absolutely repels her. It's when I want to be left alone, I just chase after her with it. No, I don't. I should though. Brilliant. Thank you. Oh, you're really, really good sport. Hands up, everybody listening and watching. I did not give Melissa any heads up that was going to happen. So yeah, if you keep an eye on the TuTu Chocolates website, you'll see some Marmite, wasabi, David Attenborough, Taylor Swift, James Bond inspired truffles and chocolates available to purchase very soon. Bobby hopes. Melissa, thank you so, so much. I would love to come up to Oxford to visit
Yeah,
the store.
please.
So
That'd
we
be
will
brilliant.
get that organised. Yeah, so we will get that organised. Have you had fun today?
Oh my gosh, so much fun. So much fun. It's been brilliant. So thank you so much for having me. And yeah, let's get a date in the diary. Come visit my chocolate shop and let's have some more fun there.
Yeah, brilliant. And thank you all so much for watching and listening, depending whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're on the traditional podcast. What's it? Remember to do all the usual stuff like, subscribe. Importantly, share this with someone you know who might actually be inspired by what Melissa shared with us today, her story. And if you want to get in touch with her or find out more about TuTu Chocolates, or even order a whole bunch of the stuff now that we know that we can stuff our faces with it with very few consequences, then I will put the links in the show notes for you. Melissa, thank you so, so much once again. You've been a really good sport as well, and I will look forward to seeing you again at some point very soon.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for listening. See you on the next one.